Welcome, everyone, to Ask a CEO Show. I'm Greg Demetrio. My day job is the CEO of Lorraine Gregory Communications, an award-winning integrated marketing company here in New York. The Ask a CEO Show is a product of gregscorneroffice.com and a production of LGC Studios. So today, we bring you the journey of a CEO who's got a little bit different story today, and it's something that CEOs should listen to because his business is helping CEOs. His name is Don Schmincke, and he is the CEO of Saga Leadership. Now, Don is an international speaker. He's a keynote speaker, published author of several leadership books. He's a coach, a trainer, a business advisor. He's a graduate of MIT and a professor at Johns Hopkins University. His resume includes working with 7,000 CEOs, and he's been described as delightfully irreverent with blinding flashes beyond popular theories. With research, teaching, and challenging the status quo, Don is able to show CEOs how to effectively impact their bottom line. It's something that's very important to our audience. Don, help me out here, Don.
Schmincke is the German name, but I answer to anything close to that, so don't worry about it.
So, Don, our audience is a mix of CEOs and those people on their journey to C-suite. And I'm sure it's an environment that you work in all the time. But before we get into that, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you wound up where you are today.
Yeah, it was a circuitous route. I never planned to be doing this. I was at MIT doing planetary physics, and I thought I was going to get into biomedical engineering, but what happened is I ended up at Johns Hopkins, and I finished my graduate work there, and I got fascinated with human grouping behaviors, which led me to interact with a number of CEOs, and they started complaining about the high failure rates of management theory and these short life cycles of these popular trendy management theory. So we took a look at that, and that took me on a whole different journey on studying failure rates. And we put together, a team of anthropologists and archaeologists, evolutionary psychologists, and geneticists. And it was a fun journey. So we ended up in this space doing this, and then we started applying it.
How did you get to MIT?
I think it was an accident. There might have been a computer glitch or something.
I mean, what was your upbringing like that got you to the point where you could get accepted to MIT?
Oh, well, I was almost a high school dropout. I forgot to show up for my senior year, and then the police told me I might have to repeat my senior year. I'm thinking that's going to be a total waste of time. So I said, well, how much time do I have? So we got 90 days left in the year. I thought, okay, what do I got to do? And I literally cranked through and finished my senior year. And at that point, then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in rock bands at the time and went to community college and began really getting fascinated with computer structures and systems of the time and science. And there were a couple of people that were retired MIT alumni, and they were like, I guess they saw something in me, but they were like, you really need to go there. So I didn't know what MIT was. I thought, it's a trade school. What is this place? So I applied, and they supported me, and I went through a number of interviews and a battery of tests, and I got in. So
that's interesting stories. Many of the CEOs I talk to have many of these checkered pasts, if you will, that we survived, and we got someplace that was not expected for sure, right? I can tell you that I'm a retired New York City detective. What did I know about marketing and communications, right? It's a funny story.
I think you're onto something there, because one of my books I haven't published yet is on entrepreneurship. And the research we've done there is that, you need to be a little crazy. And that's why you see a lot of entrepreneurs that have these checkered pasts, because they were expressing this inner talent. And it's what we're finding out is they really can't be trained. It's like you have to have a certain level of disorder to do these things.
True. I tell everybody I'm probably a better salesman because I was a detective, because two reasons. I listen very well, and I have a very large BS detector. So I do pretty good. I cut through the chase pretty quick.
That's it.
It's interesting how you apply your previous experience, not just book learning, but street learning. And it sounds like you were around the block a couple of times too before
Yeah,
before you got your act together.
a few times. You might have been chasing me a few times. I don't know.
So listen, tell us about Saga Leadership. Is it a training company, a consultancy, a provider of business education? What is it exactly?
It spun out of our research. When I left Hopkins and started, a research company to sort of look at digging more into this, because as we were applying these models, sales were doubling and tripling, and some companies 10 times in a few years. So I'm like, wow, there's something here, because the CEOs were getting very excited. So I started Saga as a research and executive education company. So we felt that we're not really consultants. We're not really out there giving advice, because we saw a lot of failure rates in that as well. So we thought, education is the way to do it, but it's got to be more than just seminars. We have to implement everything we're teaching. So essentially, we're a research and executive education company that we work with CEOs to facilitate full implementation of everything that we've researched and teach.
Well, a big part of your resume is you're a national speaker, right?
Yeah.
So now in that line of work, becoming known can be a really long haul. At what point did you know that that was working for you?
It was accidental. I was when I was teaching in the graduate school at Johns Hopkins, I stumbled onto an ancient manuscript, because I was looking at, if for leadership, for us to teach leadership in a way that isn't trendy and it's going to go through these phases, let's find something that's worked for 5,000 years, and then that we can validate with scientific models as to why it worked. And so I was doing a lot of work over the past 5,000 years in terms of these studies. I found this ancient manuscript that Oxford University had. And so I asked them for permission, and they were very supportive. So I published back in the 90s a book called The Code of the Executive. And that was a 700-year-old, basically executive training manual for samurai executives, teaching samurai how to lead. And that became, I thought, an interesting short book for academics that I could use in my courses, and some of the other professors might want to use it. But it took off. They're like, I don't know, over a dozen languages. And next thing you know, I'm on CNN and the press. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? And that's when I knew, like, we're onto something. Taking ancient leadership that can be validated, and it's consistent, and it lasts more than a 3-year fashion trend, and be validated by science, like why it works, is a thing that I should do more of. So that's where it started.
So that was the impetus for your speaking career then as well?
Yeah.
The book.
Yeah.
The book. So you produced Shogun for executives. So it was really kind of cool, right? If anybody listening remembers that book and show. So, all right. So now you have this nice business going. You're out there, you're teaching CEOs how to do better business. And bang, we got hit with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So now tell me, what was the impact on your business model, on the way you did business, how you kept the business going in the COVID perspective?
Well, everybody took a hit, because obviously if there was going to be a conference you're going to be speaking at, or doing a workshop with a live audience, that was not going to happen. So I was traveling 250,000 miles a year. And so I was hitting maybe 3 to 5 cities a week. That ended in March.
Is that a good thing for you personally?
Well, I didn't really notice it, because I was doing a lot of my literature research and development work on planes. So for me, it was a very productive time. And I love getting out there and meeting people. And I love teaching. That's really what I love doing. So being in a live audience is fun for me. But what I did is, in March, everything shut down. And I thought, well, I love teaching. How do I do this? And, I have this cigar room in my house that I don't really use anymore. So I turned it into this movie studio. And I learned how to do movies. I learned how to do filming and editing and scripting and lighting and chromatography. And I ended up putting together, because somebody said, it was one of these Zoom things, because I had to do a couple of things, by the way. Let me back up. A lot of us had to become broadcasters. We had to learn like what you do, right? And we had to figure out, okay, I can't give a speech on a Zoom call and have it go the same way. It's television. I got to figure out how to do that. So that all this combined with this studio thing I was doing. So I learned how to broadcast, and my Zoom speeches went great. I mean, people were like calling me back. They were like, wow, we had 3 hours with you. There were no Zoom fatigue. It was entertaining. It was, so that helped me become a better teacher. But when I started doing the filming for the course, a lot of them said, hey, that stuff you did with us that transformed my executive team, where we became like samurai. Can you get that out to everybody? So I did. I created an online course called.
Did you find it very different from being in front of a live audience and being in front of the camera? What was that transition like for you? Because you're in-person speaker primarily, yeah?
I tell you, a lot of it was timing. A lot of, and I hired a couple of coaches, which was great, who were in the media or were familiar with social media. And and I think a lot of it was timing, because when you think about it, you're watching TV or a movie, there's something stimulating your brain every 7 seconds. Now, if you're on stage, you can have more of a presence, you can have more of silence, and that can bring out maybe an emotion or an experience. But you do that on TV and it's like everybody's falling asleep. So it had to do with that. And then with my videos in this Becoming Samurai, I have this 9-week course, and it's like 9 videos with all kind of lessons and things. But I had to realize that they're not going to sit there and watch me talk. I've got to learn how to do B-roll, special effects, background movement, cutaways to this. I loved it, quite frankly, because I had never been a teacher that way before. And I just got a kick out of it. So yeah, we just released that course, and now I want to get that selling so that I can move on to.
You're going to put me out of business, That's what we do. But I love it when people learn. I mean, when we opened up the studio, I had to bring in a real production company because I'm a technical novice. I understand the process, but my job keeps me away from immersing myself in it. So I had to get somebody in here. And we were very fortunate just recently to merge in a full production company. So we have all the tools now. And when you talk about film production, there are so many little things that make the difference in the final product. You mentioned B-roll, you mentioned cutaways, you mentioned still photography embedded. All of those things make a better product. So
Yeah.
The fact that on top of everything else that you've learned, you learned how to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
in spare time, basically, right? You learned how to do that. So,
Yeah.
so it's wonderful. That's how CEOs survive. They keep expanding and doing different stuff, right? So listen, so let me ask you a question. This is an interesting question. Who's the best client for you?
Yeah, that is an interesting question, because I tell you who our worst clients are is when we go in to transform a company. If the CEO thinks they already know everything, that means they've stopped learning. And maybe they brought me in because my books are popular, or they may look good if they bring me in because I'm the keynote speaker or something. But that's not a good client, because I love people that want to learn, because I'm a teacher, right? So the best clients really, I think, are CEOs who are self-aware and feeling enough discomfort with their current organization's performance that they realize it's time to get to the next level. You know what I mean? It's like a bell curve. I mean, on one end, it's like, well, we're doing fine, and let's just keep day after day doing the same thing, and we're good, and I've got a nice lifestyle. That's not a good client. And on the other end, it's people that are in basically a lot of pain, and they're the ones that are probably better, because the people who are comfortable aren't really a good client. It's the ones that realize, hey, I can do better, or I'm not doing better. You know what I mean? They're either enlightened enough to say we got to keep pushing the needle, or they're getting hit by flat revenues or dysfunction. I mean, they hate showing up for work because there's so much politics going on and there's people problems. Those are great. Those are great CEOs to work with, because they want to get something done, and they want to grow.
Yeah, I think you cannot be the be all and the end all of any situation. You have to know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to know where to reach out and find out how to know what you know, supposed to know. So listen, they're in my ear. They're telling me we need to take a quick break so we can
Sure.
pay some bills. So we're going to be a little quiet for a bit and let the production people do what they do. And then we'll be back in a moment.
Creating a comprehensive, effective marketing plan can be complex and difficult, but it doesn't have to be. At Lorraine Gregory Communications, we make it easy. Experience matters.
Hello, my name is Tom Hunt, the founder of Fame. Now, Fame loves the Ask a CEO podcast. We've actually been working with Greg and Peter behind the scenes for the past year, over a year, I think, to help build and grow the show. And so if you have a business, specifically a B2B business, and you're looking to raise awareness with people in your field, to build relationships with people in your industry, then we would love to talk. We have this almost completely done for you service where we'll set up and grow a podcast that ideally will become profitable within the first 6 months to a year. So if that's something that interests you, you can just go to fame.so, check out our case studies, etc. We would love to talk. And of course, I do want to say thank you to Greg and Peter for building such an awesome podcast with Ask a CEO.
And we're back with Don Schmincke. Yes, close enough?
Good enough. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a weird name, because I never knew how to pronounce it right myself till I went to Germany. And it's like a common noun. Schminke means like makeup or, artist. Actually, there's a famous artist paint company called Schminke.
Is that right?
But I didn't know anything about it.
I apologize anyhow for being so inferior when it comes to pronunciations.
Don't worry about it.
English is my second language, I think, from the time I was born.
Hey, by the time I was 5 years old, I knew I cannot take this last name seriously. So I'm just going to roll with it.
Well, look, mine is Demetrio. Where are you going to go with that, right? So listen, so the strategies that you employ to attract new clients, how do you go about that? Are you an internet play? Or you do regular direct marketing? What's your marketing program look like for Saga?
Generally, I find that speaking out in the public, publishing, the books, articles, and a lot of the online work tends to attract CEOs who are self-aware and realizing they're either in pain and need to change, or they're enlightened enough to where they want to keep moving, but they need something different and unique. And I think that's the best, because when I'm either they're reading what I'm writing, or I'm in front of them for 1 to 3 hours, they're getting it, like, wow, this is something different. This is new. This is scientific. And that generates a lot of prospects for us.
Well, those are the people you've already gotten. How do you go and get people that you don't have? How do you get your messaging out to them?
Well, that's been the challenge, because, I want to get the messaging out to a lot more people. And what I'm finding, and COVID helped inspire this, and people like yourself who have been doing these things like podcasting, and what I'm looking at is using the social media to get this content out to everyone and let them apply it, let them use it. So I'm doing like micro courses, a new experiment, like in fact, for your viewers too, if you want, I'm putting together these free, just fast, like maybe 4 3-minute videos, like every 48 hours, just to stimulate thinking, or to get a model or a methodology in their mind so they can start applying it immediately. Because there's a lot of things we can do to improve. And to me, that's exciting to do. So I'm thinking about that as a new channel for getting out in front of it.
Well, my suggestion to the CEOs that I talk to is that you are the face of the brand, right? You need to be out there. You need to be pitching the brand message for your whatever company, whether you make widgets or, your hair salon, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The more you can personalize the company in terms of the CEO's personal branding and messaging, the stronger your position becomes, the more you become recognized. You might even turn into an influencer in a certain vertical, but it's very, very important. And so that's something that I would suggest that all CEOs take to heart. Don't just be in your office. Don't just let your team do what they're supposed to do. You take a hand in it and you be out there in front. One of the reasons why Ask a CEO came about was because I wanted to talk to CEOs. I love talking to CEOs, but I wanted to talk to more of them.
Yeah.
and hopefully turn some of them into clients, which has happened. Thank you, God. It's happened very nicely. But really, what I'm doing is I'm bypassing all the gatekeepers because people have come to me directly.
Yeah.
So it really helps do that.
And what I find that the direct, when I'm locked in a room with maybe 10 or 15 CEOs in a workshop, that's the most direct face-to-face educational branding experience you can. And I just got an award from a CEO membership organization. They said I've done probably close to 2,000 now speeches. And that means, and I did the calculations, it's like, that means I've trained 15,000 CEOs. So talk about branding, right? And it's great because I got a nice database and they sort of know me. So I get calls to come back and speak more. And, but I'm looking at social media too, because it's one thing to be in a room with 15,000 CEOs over so many years, but things like what you're doing, podcasting or, being out there, that's a new area for me to explore that we're currently involved with.
Well, running the company eats the clock up pretty well, but if you carve out a little piece of chunk of time to be able to do it, I'm sure it pays dividends over the long haul. I think we're approaching over a year now with ours, and I'm pretty sure we're up about 4,000 downloads a month. So it takes a while, but it really pays dividends. But the fact of the matter is, you're teaching CEOs, 15,000 CEOs, and they all have your phone number. Mm-hmm. That's gold. That's gold in any marketer's world. That's gold. Yeah. So, all right. So let's say you are a educator, you're a trainer, you're a coach. But nowadays, everybody that is doing what we just talked about, they're doing webinars, they're doing virtual meetings, they're offering training on every topic under the sun. How do you and Saga compete with that?
I know it's interesting what the world has become. We are surrounded by so much noise. It's hard to listen or find what it is we want, because you can just type in anything on a Google search and you'll get millions of hits. So what we have been blessed with, and this was not a marketing or strategy for us, but when we exposed the high failure rates of a lot of these management theories, that all of a sudden pulls us out of the noise a bit. So when somebody's reading an article or my book, or they're hearing me speak, or they're YouTube, or they're seeing me on a podcast, we sort of approach it in a totally different way. People are like, wait a minute, nobody's ever said that before. Like failure rates? Mm-hmm. So yeah, go to Google Scholar, type in management theory of failure. You're going to get over 4 million published literary papers on this, and so people don't realize it. And then we do is we say, okay, we conduct research to explain why they fail and how to fix it. So that sort of pulls us out of the mainstream in terms of all that noise. And it's true. I mean, think about it. How many of your listeners, their employees say, wow, I can't wait till the boss brings in another consultant, or I can't wait for my boss to read a new book.
Zero.
Yeah. So for us, it was kind of easy to distinguish ourselves because we basically led with that. And people were like, whoa, So
well, you're guarding against that failure for them. I mean, you don't want to take their money just because. You want to help them and guard against the failure and to give them the tools by which to do that. So that's really interesting. So what does an engagement look like to you, a new client, let's say? How they come to you and what does the whole engagement look like?
Well, we customize it in phases. Like we found out when we were looking through the failure rates, and this is something that your audience may find interesting, is we found that people were like, okay, I got a problem. Let's get a referral or put in an RFP and we'll select somebody. Fast forward, they leave, cynical employees. Maybe there was some progress made, but a lot of it wasn't, they weren't ecstatic from the experience. So we thought, look, why don't we, there's 5 phases. There's a ready phase, aim, launch, accelerate, and achieve orbit. I'm a planetary physicist, so forgive the rocketry. But the phase 1 is readiness. Like, why do anything? And that's what we do. So when a client calls us, like, I don't know if you need to do anything. What sense does it make for you financially? Because if you're only if you're only going to save 50,000 a year, go watch some great podcasts like yours, get a book, watch some TEDx talks. But if you're looking at 500,000, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, now you got something to look at. But what are you going to do? You really don't know. They think, well, we need sales training, or we need this, or we need that. So we go to phase 2, which is that situational analysis, which means let's find out what the real problem is. Because a lot of times I find out we are throwing money and time at symptoms, not problems. So are you addressing a symptom, or is there a deeper problem? And once we understand that, then it's easier then to customize a program that could be a combination of workshops, retreats, group coaching, individual coaching, a lot of educational modalities. Well, first we crank into the executive team. That's the launch phase, because if the executive team is not behind any change, it's just not going to happen.
Is there a sweet spot for you in terms of corporate size?
It's interesting. I've done everything from, the U.S. Navy we worked with the Pentagon on transforming fleet warfare readiness, which was proven successfully in the Gulf War, to startups in Silicon Valley. So it's been a whole range. We've done family business. Actually, probably have maybe a third of our work now is with family-owned businesses. We've done nonprofits. It's been all over. And I think what seems to be the common factor is humans coming together to try to do something.
I find that CEOs are very generous, not only on the business side, but on the personal side. Once you have a client, you become vested in their personal struggle, their personal journey, and you want to help them. Not to be a Pollyanna about it, but you kind of identify with people. You have more deep conversations with them. You find out what their spirituality level is, what their family background is like, and you start to understand what they're really asking you. And I think that's one of the things that drives the way I do business. I love the personal aspect of it. I love learning about my CEOs that come to me for marketing and communications. So, if you're customizing each engagement to fit that person. And the deeper you know them, the deeper you know their company, the better you can do, the more effective they're going to be.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So listen, so you're an author. So why don't you tell us about some of the books that you've written and where they are available and so forth?
Sure. I've written a number of books, maybe 3 or 4. A couple did well, a couple sucked. But the couple that did well.
You're the world's worst salesperson. I'm sorry.
I think hopefully people like the authenticity. But the first one, The Code of the Executive, which I wrote back in the 90s that I mentioned earlier, that's still on Amazon. It's still distributed everywhere. And for CEOs that want to take a look at what executives were dealing with 700 years ago, that's a good book, because it's shocking to find out, wow, we're still dealing with a lot of those problems today. And that gave me a chance to put together the scientific insights. And actually, that book became the foundation for the new Becoming Samurai online leadership program. So if you read the book, you take the program, you'll see I took several things out of there about creating bravery and honor. Because when I looked at all these failed changes in organizations and these frustrated CEOs, at the bottom of it all, they were all sabotaged by fear and selfishness. Well, all the politics, the change resistance, the lack of accountability, all those issues they complain about, at the root cause was fear and selfishness. And that is a biological event. That is not a trendy theory. That is part of our species, because it all comes out of genetic warfare. So if you can remove fear and selfishness from an organization, your strategic execution speed goes up, and so do your sales and performance, and you're having more fun. So I created this Becoming Samurai course really to be like, hopefully there's more out there, but it seems like the first course to address fear and selfishness, to create bravery and honor. So that book was a great, and I thank Oxford University for letting me have access to that. But the other book is High Altitude Leadership we did with NBC. My co-author, Chris Warner, who I met climbing in the Andes, he's probably one of the top rescue climbers in the world. And He saved all those bodies on Everest, I think back in 2000 when they had this total disaster going on. I forgot the exact year. I think it was 2000. Anyway, we got together when he was going to do K2 for NBC. And so we literally did the book live for everyone by satellite radio as he takes on the most dangerous mountain in the world. And it was actually nominated for a number of awards
All right.
when NBC released it, because he self-filmed the whole thing. And the book came out of that, High Altitude Leadership. And so Chris Warner, my co-author, was great in that.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm a frustrated writer myself. One of these days I'll get the book out. But right now I'm happy with my blogging and my occasional opinion piece in the local press. But so we could talk all day, Don. I'm serious. What a wonderful conversation we're having. So before I let you go, I've always asked my guests, it's a two-part question. What's the best advice you ever got, either personally or business-wise? And what would your advice be to people on their journey to the C-suite?
What's the advice I've got? I think I have to go back to Ronald Reagan. Trust but verify. Because I can't tell you how many times I hired teams to come in to take on the projects or the company, because I just want to teach. I just want to research and teach. I wanted someone else to do everything else, but I had to fire so many who said they were great, and they gave me great stories, but they ended up damaging my business. They were totally unable to execute, and I really should have verified earlier their performance. And so I learned a lot from that advice. But the advice to a CEO who's coming up, journeying to the corner office, as you said, which is a great metaphor to look at, is I think I learned it from what 700 years ago they told me is prepare to die. And what I mean by that is not the physical death, because most of the samurai training was death of the ego. And so if I was going to give advice to an up-and-coming executive, is that the death of your old beliefs, it's necessary in order to birth the new beliefs for driving higher executive behavior.
That is a terrific statement. It's very deep. Got to think about that for a while. But I think it's spot on. Because if you live with that ingrained belief you've had, and it's back here, and you notice something that's got a little fishy, and you don't kill it, it's going to keep haunting you. So, Donald, I have to tell you, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm going to give you the floor now to tell people how they can get a hold of you, what you have to offer, et cetera, et cetera. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Well, the website where I try to keep a lot of this stuff in there is sagaleadership.com. We stole that from the Vikings, the Saga. It's so SAGA leadership.com. And in there you can see the samurai course. But more importantly, there's I'm putting together, because this podcast thing is new to me and I'm learning a lot from people like you, or experts in what you're doing, is if you /wait list right now, and I'm probably going to change that to /podcast. I'm putting a lot of the stuff free for downloading to audiences, because I know we barely scratched the surfaces, but I'm putting up some of those mini courses, and I'm just joining you guys as an amateur right now, because I'm just learning about how you guys do your work. But I'm going to put
apparently you have some pretty good film credit going behind you, so I'm going to be checking that out as soon as we get off this interview.
Good. Thank you for having me, though. I appreciate you, making time for me.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. Don't miss an upcoming episode of Ask a CEO Interviews. We'll have invited guests from all industries, all over the country and the world. Visit gregscorneroffice.com for the full video version, or listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platforms. If you like the show, don't forget to subscribe and share far and wide, and you'll be helping us to build a growing audience. So thank you all. We'll see you next time.